privilege to introduce Arlene. It's my privilege to introduce Arlene Goldbard. Arlene is a writer, speaker, consultant, visual artist, and cultural activist whose focus is the intersection of culture, politics, and spirituality. She was born in New York and grew up near San Francisco. She currently lives in Lamy, New Mexico, with her husband, the sculptor Rick Yoshimoto. Arlene has written a number of books, the most recent being The Intercessor, which is the subject this evening. Please note, nota bene, that in the chat you will find a link to read about The Intercessor, including highly favorable comments from readers and discount codes to order the book. So be sure and check the link. Now a little more about Arlene. She has addressed many academic and community audiences in the U.S. and abroad, and has served as advisor to a wide variety of organizations. In 2019, she served as Chief Policy Wonk of the U.S. Department of Arts and Culture, which is a national network of activists, artists, and cultural organizers. Also, very importantly, she served as president of the board of directors of the Shalom Center. In 2021, she co-founded and co-hosts the international podcast, A Culture of Possibility. Her creativity, versatility, and engagement with community in so many ways is impressive and moving. I now turn the program over to her.
Thanks so much, Marge, and thank you for inviting me. You guys, what I'm planning to do is talk a little bit about the book and do some short readings in between those comments and give some space for people to ask questions or to say something between the readings. But if you want to save your questions or save the other things you want to talk about till the end, that's fine too. I didn't ask you, Marge, how long we're supposed to be going for.
Well, altogether an hour.
An hour. Okay, great. Yeah, that's what I thought might be true. So I'm going to tell you how I came to write the book because it's kind of a wheels within wheels story, and I think it will give useful information about the book. The title, The Intercessor, is an English translation of a Hebrew phrase or name, Melez Yosher. It means somebody who has a practice of pleading with higher realms to intercede on behalf of a person who is ill or has a problem or even themselves. And the first character in the book, it has 8 chapters, the first 7 of which is narrated each by a different character in the story. And the first one is about a woman called Sharon Marks, who's the intercessor of the story. And her work is threaded through everybody else's stories in some ways. So I wrote this book starting right after Trump was elected, because I was really depressed. You know, if people, I think a lot of people like me are what you might call 60s people. You know, we came of age politically during that period. And you look backwards and you see a long, slow building of an expansion of rights and community and connection and understanding in society. Not that we were living in heaven on earth, but you could see that progress had been made as a result of people's longtime struggles. And as soon as Trump was elected, you'll recall he started issuing these executive orders, erasing things, taking things down that had taken a long time to build up. And I felt very disheartened and disappointed and depressed by that. And I decided that I would intercede for myself. I had taken a course 20 years ago from Rabbi Ruth Gon Kagan, wonderful rabbi, has a community in Jerusalem. And she comes from a long lineage of people who've been intercessors. And she's taught this course several times. So I took it about 20 years ago, and I've used what I learned there quite a bit, but I hadn't used it in a while, and my memory is not exactly what it used to be. And I decided that I would pull out this file folder that had all the papers in it from the course. And when I did, there was on the top a short story called The Intercessor, which has since been reworked to be the first chapter of this novel. And I read the story and I thought, that's kind of an interesting story. I have zero memory of writing it. It just sort of appeared in the file folder. And when I did the intercession for myself, the question that I asked was, what should I do now? And the answer I got is, you should write 7 more stories like this. So suddenly, out of my despair, I had something to do for quite a few months that was engrossing and enjoyable and had ambitions that I wanted to embrace, which was to write a book that showed people the power of spiritual community and how it's possible to build spiritual community. And that's really the through line of the novel. So what it's about is how I got there too. I'm going to start by reading you just a little bit of Sharon's story because when she tells about what it is to be an intercessor, I think that will give you a good glimpse of the practice. Imagine a doctor who must swallow some of her own medicine, or else the patient won't get well. When I took on this work, I knew I'd be playing with a whole handful of wild cards, but this side effect has to be the wildest. You see, people come to me for help. The sign on my door says, Sharon Marks, Investigations, and mostly I make my living from the ordinary types of human troubles, insurance scams, missing persons, hidden assets. Those are the clients who come through referrals from attorneys or other satisfied customers. But people also find me through a very different kind of network. You might call them spiritual seekers. They aren't exactly sure what they want. A vague anxiety and a nagging feeling are the 2 commonest presenting symptoms. They come to me because they've heard I have a way of looking beyond the complaint to discover what a person really needs and how to get it. My method doesn't always succeed, but a lot of the time it works in ways I never could have expected. For about half the cases, whatever remedy I prescribe, I have to do the same thing myself, swallowing some of the medicine I'm dishing out. So that's how I found the answer to my family's secret. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Start at the beginning, Sharon, like my friend Nomi always says. Take a breath, sugar, and start at the beginning. Okay, probably the beginning is before I can even remember. Maybe I overheard something in my mother's womb, but I'm going to start quite a while ago, a few years after I met Reb Rivi. I'm a spiritual seeker too, but instead of running off to India to find serenity in the lotus position, for the past couple of decades, I've been investigating my own tradition as a Jew. Rivi is a local rabbi who's taught me a lot and become a friend along the way. She likes to categorize people. When we first met, she put me in the pigeonhole for culinary Judaism. Kids who were brought up eating chopped liver and chicken soup, whose families celebrated all the Jewish holidays with the same humongous meal, and who got sent to some kind of Sunday school for their weekly hour of Jewish education. But she's right, I admit, but just by one generation. Bubi Faye, my dad's mother, was observant, if not entirely Orthodox. They kept kosher, Daddy said, which also included eating treif, like the cheeseburgers he loved, off paper plates once in a while, blessing the Shabbos candles every Friday night, and making challah French toast on Sunday mornings, a custom my parents carried on. All the Judaica in my parents' house came from her. A brass Seder plate from Israel with a special green patina, silver candlesticks that my family lit maybe once a year, a Hanukkah, the menorah used annually for the faux Christmas my parents made out of that holiday. Now it all sits on my shelves, along with the things I've acquired. My Havdalah set, a special candle and cup used to mark the division between Shabbat or holidays and ordinary time. My tzedakah box, where I saved coins for charity, and gets more use every season than my parents gave it in a lifetime. Bubi Faye died when I was 2, so I don't remember her except to recognize her photograph. but I cherish my personal legacy from her. A tiny Kiddush cup, a silver goblet for wine to be blessed on Shabbos and holidays. There's engraving around the cup's foot. Yalda Tova, good girl in Hebrew, and Shira, my Hebrew name. Still, I don't think Ribby's pigeonhole tells the whole story. I also belong in the pigeonhole for kids whose families thought FDR was God, who were brought up believing that being Jewish was a guarantee of progressive politics. I don't think I knew there could be Jewish Republicans until the Reagan administration. Norman Podhoretz, Irving Kristol, and all that gang. What a rude awakening that was. Anyway, for me, actually learning the Jewish texts and stories and spiritual technologies, that's what Rivi likes to call them. So I do too, out of loyalty to her, even though it sounds a little more new agey than I like. This has been as exotic and eye-opening as a trek to India was for my friend Steve. 2 years of traveling by rail from ashram to ashram ended with Steve sitting in a cave while a teacher whacked him on the knee every time he began to show signs of drifting off. You're sitting on a rock in a cave, the teacher shouted each time, bringing Steve back to earth. Thinking he might as well be sitting in a chair in a house, he brought Passage home. Me too, at least home to my roots. So I investigate divorce cases and insurance claims by day. And by night I study, dipping my toes into the waters of Zohar and other mystical texts and practices. I want to tell you right now that I'm not one of those Hollywood Kabbalah fans. No magic strings, no magic potions, really no magic at all, in the sense of believing that buying something ensures future happiness. But here is what I have discovered. There are things to be learned, real things, once you let go of the rationalist tick. What, you may ask, is the rationalist tick? Faced with anything mysterious, the mind emits a pre-recorded message that blocks all incoming information. Whoa, it says, I don't believe in that kind of thing. I'm sure there's a rational explanation. Maybe so. I don't check my brain at the shul door. It seems obvious to me that we have these big brains to explore creation, to learn, and to repair the world. It doesn't take anything away from God or spirit or infinite source or mystery, whatever you want to call him, her, it, them, to accept evolution or nuclear fission or the Big Bang as part of our reality map. But mystery is mystery. How can spiritual certainty, including dyed-in-the-wool convinced atheism, be anything other than an act of faith? So if you want to tie yourself in a knot coming up with alternative explanations for my experiences, knock yourself out. But as for me, I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I know what happened. So that's a little bit of Sharon. If anybody has a question that's burning a hole in their pocket right now, go ahead and ask it, or I'll go to another section. Lynn, it looks like you're talking, but you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, I find myself suddenly excited and curious about the Melitz Yosher. I mean, I've heard you speak about it, I read the book, and yet suddenly, how you've spoken about it, of obviously there's a process to this, and I don't know whether this is a place and a time for you to speak about it, or whether you'd like to talk about it at the end of the book.
A process for how you conduct an intercession.
Yeah.
When I give you, I'll have a couple readings that have one in it, so I'll
Okay.
definitely get to that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Of course. Thank you, Lynn.
Can you just say what the Hebrew term is again?
Melitz, if we were spelling it in English, it would be Melitz, Yosher, Yosher. So if you've heard that phrase before, it has a conventional usage. Like if somebody passes away, observant people, if they're at the funeral, they say, may this person be a Melitz Yosher for us, meaning when someone has just passed on, they're closer to upstairs, they're closer to the place where forces can move on your behalf. And so we often ask that people who've passed away intercede for us.
Uh-huh. I never heard that term before, actually. I'm just wondering about the Hebrew root of it, but I can check that out.
Okay, because I don't have it right here in front of me.
Yeah.
People have asked me why I wrote the book, and one of the reasons, probably the strongest one, is to explore this challenge of building spiritual community. But I also have given the answer that it's a love letter to Jewish renewal, because Jewish renewal is the spiritual path within Judaism that it is the one that I was led to and that I've followed for quite a few years now. I grew up in pretty much of a secular family. I did have my 1 hour of Jewish education every Sunday, and that was about it. But much later in life, it's a complicated story, but I read a book that galvanized my desire to go deeper into Judaism, and the circumstances of my life were such that I was led to a rabbi in Seattle, who some of you I think may have encountered, Rabbi David Wolfblank, of blessed memory. And he was a very strong presence in the practice of Jewish renewal, which was a formation that really emerged in the 60s. A lot of people mention Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi as a founder of it. Rabbi Arthur Waskow of blessed memory is also a co-founder of it. And other people have had strong roles in it. And the idea of it was to renew the tradition for the benefit of the living, so that you draw deeply on all the learning that has accrued from the past, the learning and experience, but you bring into it the values that we want to put forward today. So, for example, very egalitarian, as many women as men rabbis. It's very open to other spiritual practices and influenced by them. It draws on ancient meditation practices, 12th century, 13th century, and psychology of today. So that's the picture of it. And I think most of you have encountered it, but if you haven't, a good place to start is to go to aleph.org, aleph.org, the Alliance for Jewish Renewal. So the influence of Jewish renewal, because it was my world, because I was close up and I had my nose pressed against the window of it, I thought everybody must know about it. But I subsequently have been involved in a number of Jewish things where people never heard the phrase before. They never heard the name before. They've had a zero encounter with it. And that really gave me a lot of energy for writing the book, because I wanted to do as much as I can to introduce people. So I'm going to read to you from another chapter. This is a chapter that's narrated by a character whose name is Nomi. Her name used to be Nancy. She was born into a Southern Baptist family, and circumstances of her young life led her to become Jewish. And I'm going to read you a little bit about how that happened. And if I was good at accents, I would totally do the South Carolina accent, because I've spent quite a bit of time there working, but I can't do accents at all. So just imagine that this is a nice blonde girl with a South Carolina accent talking. I was born in 1967 in a part of South Carolina you've probably never heard of, Beaufort County. It's on the South Coast. If people know the area, it's probably from visiting Hilton Head. But my part of the Low Country isn't all cocktails on the veranda, darling. There are more facilities housing Marines than tourists near the tiny, majority white, solid Republican town I came up in. It's hot and steamy, and palmetto bugs hugely outnumber palmetto trees. My parents still live in the butter yellow clapboard house I grew up in, but I haven't visited for a very long time. You could say I was a problem child. I never felt at home in my hometown. For that matter, I never truly felt at home in my house or church or the local white school, as everyone called it back then. Segregation had been outlawed, but when the integration order came down, white parents started Christian academies to keep their kids from having to attend the public school, or as they called it, black school. I had friends. We played with dolls and jacks and watched cartoons in my pink room with the lacy pink curtains and matching bedspread. My mother always looked so happy to see us when she came upstairs in her apron to offer milk and cookies. When the memory visits me now, her expression telegraphs relief that I was doing something normal instead of curling up alone on the window seat with a book that had no pictures. It seems a little cuckoo to say so, but when I did the normal things, hoping they'd make her happy was a big part of why. But if I was doing something Mama liked, inside myself I was mostly counting the minutes to get back to my book. I like to read the Bible, but just the part that folks called the Old Testament. I never got around to making the profession of faith that got you baptized. Most kids were 12 or so when they did it. I just kept postponing until I was gone. I was shy and bookish. The library shelf I visited most often held 20th century history. I checked out all the books on that rickety shelf, one at a time, and read them on the porch swing one high school summer vacation, cooling myself by rolling a glass of iced lemonade along my forehead. I'd gotten a Walkman for Christmas that year, and I kept it tuned low to a radio station that specialized in Southern blues and rock. When I see one of those books again, the Allman Brothers start playing in my head. I can hear Dreams right now. I love them both still, the books and the band. I had dreams, or rather the same few nightmares over and over. I saw myself packed into a crowded train car trying to hang onto my mother's hand, even though I was so hungry and thirsty I could barely stand. I clutched a doll with blonde hair like mine and a white dress with lace trim. The train lurched and I felt her slip out of my hands. I woke up crying. In another dream, I saw myself entering a large room with low ceilings and blotchy concrete walls filled with people standing naked. A soldier pointed his bayonet at me. I heard myself screaming over and over until I woke up. It was hard to go back to sleep. I got out of Beaufort County as soon as I could after high school, making a beeline for UC Berkeley in 1985. My waking life took a turn for the better. I made a few friends. I learned a little about other cultures and parts of the world. I saw every foreign movie the art houses showed. I learned how to smoke cigarettes and drink wine and roll joints. I took walks along the bay, a very different ocean, windy and cool, pelicans and herons galore. I scared and thrilled myself with how new everything was. I had to pep talk myself in front of the mirror just to gin up the courage to leave the house. Toughen up, honey. You may look like a Girl Scout, but you pack a punch. I made myself do it every day, and I can't recall regretting it once. Gradually, I came to feel like I belonged in the East Bay. Undergrad in English, then graduate school in what was then called the School of Library and Information Studies. I got a job on campus. I liked being a librarian, the smells of paper, ink and leather, the cool surfaces of the tables and chairs, people asking me questions and me actually finding them the answers, the changing cast of characters, street people, and professors emeriti. I also loved learning, so my main hobby was extension classes. From this distance, I think it would be fair for someone to say I'd found a way to continue doing what I wanted to do as a kid. But without the watchful eyes of my parents keeping track, it was all much lighter and more fun. One day I was having coffee in my favorite old funky dark coffee place. I was a sucker for wood-paneled booths. Bach was playing in the background. Every other table was filled with people staring at laptop screens, half-full cups beside them. Sharon Marks, a new friend I'd met in a world literature extension class, sat across from me. This was 2012, quite a few years ago now. Lifelong learning, you know. Sharon was fast talking, sophisticated, comfortable asking any question she wanted. She was a little bit of a thing, but her energy was huge. Sometimes for a minute or two, I wanted to be her. I complained that I was tired because I hadn't slept well the night before. She wanted to know why, so I told her about the dreams. They'd never stopped, but you could say I'd become more used to them. I gewalt, Sharon said. She looked pale, even a little shaken. I told her I didn't know what that meant. It's what we Jews say if something is shocking or forceful, she said, kind of like holy shit, but not rude. I didn't know she was Jewish. I hadn't developed much Judar at that time. Why did you say it then? I asked. Because you're having dreams of the Holocaust, the transport trains, the gas chambers. Have you watched many World War II movies? Not really. I used to read a lot of history of that period, but no, not much film. Did you ever think the dreams were about that? I felt a little stupid as I asked myself why not. No, not really. When they started, I had no frame of reference. If I yelled, one of my parents came and sat with me till I fell asleep again. They'd say, "Don't fret, honey. It's just a bad dream." After that, they were just repeats of something from childhood. I never gave them a context. Straightening her arms as if to push the table away, Sharon took a deep breath. Do you have any idea why you've been having these dreams? You're making me nervous, I told her. I started shredding my paper napkin into tiny pieces. I've been having them since I was 6 or 7. A lot of people have recurring dreams. I looked it up. There's a mystical concept that Jews murdered in the Holocaust were reincarnated in non-Jewish bodies because there weren't enough of us left to go around. Hagilgulim, the reincarnated, they have memories of things they haven't experienced in this lifetime. You're saying I'm one of them? Sharon shrugged. What do I know? But let's see if we can ask someone who might. And they go to visit a rabbi who talks to them about this. And many people have asked me, is this a real thing? This is a totally real thing. If you Google that, you will see tons of websites. And also, I mean, notable people. I mentioned in the book a book by the African-American writer Julius Lester, who was very, very active in the civil rights movement in the 60s, who had this belief about himself and converted and became very scholarly and observant in terms of Jewish learning and wrote a book about it called Love Song. So this is, whether you believe it or not, it's real in some way. So that's one thing about the book is that it discusses among a number of Jewish practices that are well known in certain worlds, but not necessarily well known generally in the Jewish world or in the secular world. So intercession, the Melitzer share practice, the sort of original text of it is a book by Luzzatto called The Way of God. That's an 18th century book. So people have been talking for a long time about how it's possible to beseech higher powers to channel help for people who need it here in ASEA, here in the material world. There are also truths about Jews in America today that really aren't very well known. For example, is a common belief that Jews are white. But increasingly, there are more Jews of color in spiritual and other leadership roles in the Jewish world, and especially in the more progressive worlds of Reconstructionism, Jewish renewal, and to a certain extent, Reform Judaism. So if there's any question now, go ahead and ask it. And if not, I'm going to read you a section about somebody who kind of fits that description. Yes, Deborah.
Hi, Arlene. I'm so glad to be here tonight. I got here a little late, but I finished your book last night and I just could not put it down. I loved everything about that book. And I particularly love the characters and how you develop them, and the fact that you are addressing what we were seeking in the 60s and are still seeking, and how much a part of Judaism it is. So I just felt like you wrote that book for me. I know it's more than an audience of one, but it was just, it just spoke to me so strongly. And I just wanted to share that because I couldn't put it down. I loved everything that you wrote about. I even loved the character of Rabbi Deborah. And, you know, it reminded me of some other Jewish boards and, you know, prickly situations that I've seen. So it felt very, very much current and also ancient at the same time. And I was raised secular, so I'm embracing my Judaism since I came to Santa Fe. And it's been an incredible journey. But reading your book, you had so much, it was so rich in Jewish history, Jewish information that I hadn't read. So I just want to thank you. It was a
Well,
gift.
many thanks. You make me feel so good, Deborah. I did write it for you. And
Oh, thank you.
I wrote it for everybody whose heart and mind are asking for this. And I think there's a lot of us. But
Yeah,
thank
there
you
are a
so
lot
much.
of us.
You made me feel wonderful saying that. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Well, the next reading I'm going to do is from Iz's chapter, which you'll recall. So is his father is an Ashkenazi Jew. His mother is Okinawan, who she was born in Hawaii and migrated to the Bay Area, which is where the book takes place. And I'm going to read you a little bit about what he has to say. So he's the youngest character. No, he's not the youngest character in the book, but he's the youngest one who has a chapter of his own. He's a young man in his 20s at the point the chapter ends. He says, one part of my ecumenical upbringing was going to Reb Jonathan Fox's Sunday school, starting when I was 6 or 7. His wife Judy did most of the teaching for the younger kids, learning Hebrew, songs, holidays, stories, little craft and cooking projects like making hamantashen. It was fun. Right about when I turned 11, I switched to the B'nai Mitzvah prep class, where kids went to grown-up services. We learned the parts of the service and practiced some of the liturgy. We studied the Parsha and Haftorah assigned for our birthdays, learned how to lane, to read Torah, thought about what our community service project would be, and planned our Divrei Torah, our speeches. My birthday Parsha was Balak. It features a talking donkey, which right there is all a growing boy could want for his bar mitzvah. There's a short bit at the end about having sex with Midianites and a plague coming from that, but almost the whole Parsha turns on one story. It's about Balaam, a prophet, but not an Israelite. He's invited by Balak, a king in Moab, on behalf of his own people and the Midianites, to come curse the Israelites, who have become numerous and strong, defeating everyone in battle. God tells Balaam not to go, despite major enticements, gifts, and like that. Finally, God gives permission on the condition that Balaam does only what God instructs, and the prophet sets out to meet Balak. Along the way, his donkey balks and swerves off the road. She backs Balaam into a wall and finally lies down, refusing to go farther. Balaam is furious and beats the donkey. That's when the donkey talks. The Jenny said to Balaam, look, I am the Jenny that you have been riding all along until this day. Have I been in the habit of doing this to you? And he answered, no. It turns out an angel has been sent to block the way. The donkey sees the angel, but Balaam can't see it until God opens his eyes. From there, it's a long story with altars and sacrifices and Balaam being unable to curse the Israelites. He climbs to different vantage points to try, but each time he ends up blessing them instead, frustrating Balak. One of his blessings is part of the liturgy we sing first thing in the morning service. How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel.
Hmm.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkanetecha Yisrael. I don't know if I can do justice to how I felt finding out at 11 that this is my birth parsha. It made me want more than anything to have a bar mitzvah. I read Balak as portraying how adults always think they know everything, like Balaam starts beating the donkey for disobeying him. What else could be going on? What could a stupid animal know better than a wise prophet? And then it turns out that the stupid animal can plainly see an angel blocking his way, and all Balaam can see is his own anger. At that age, this was the perfect revenge for every time someone said, "My dear child," or something like that to shut me up. I'm not exaggerating when I say it became a mantra for me. What are you not seeing? And it still is. When I got ready to write the Dvar Torah I would deliver on my bar mitzvah, I focused on the argument between Balaam and the donkey, using the concept of machloket l'shem shamayim, argument for the sake of heaven, not to defeat your opponent, but to find truth. It was a good choice, even though I didn't get all its implications at the time. It was clear that Jews love debate. It is so foundational to our identity that our texts are arguments. Each page of Talmud, for instance, the main text of Rabbinic Judaism, is divided into blocks. Every page contains a central block of text, and all around it are opinions, disputes, elaborations attributed to different rabbis. None of them is the right answer. When years after my bar mitzvah, I got interested in studying Talmud, I told Reb Jonathan I was loving it. He smiled at me. He asked, knowing you, how could you not love a practice in which disputation is a form of worship? Then he told me Red Rivi said that. Jews have a big thing about giving credit. Yichus, they call it, meaning something like pedigree. Whoever said that thing first, it turns out to be the key to my life. And the answer was that I did love it, despite whatever pushback I got. I should say that while I tried to define all the Hebrew and Yiddish words in the context, there's a long glossary at the end for people who aren't familiar with any of that. So the language shouldn't be an impediment to most people, I don't think. Anything popping up? Yeah, Marge.
Well, I think, the characters are fascinating. It seems that each of them is on a journey. They're all on in a stage of evolving. And that's one observation I have, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's true for all of us too on the Zoom, right? And everybody we meet. I'm gonna have a birthday this week, and I was just talking to somebody today and saying, I can't believe that I'm this years old when I'm finally learning this thing that the person was talking to me about. And I have that experience all the time. And sometimes I feel like, I know there's an end when I'm not going to be here on this planet anymore. But before that, is there ever a time when I can stop interrogating everything that I'm thinking, feeling, and doing and learning from my experience? And the answer has to be no. So you're 100% right. They're all on a journey. Yeah. Well, you guys, I'm going to read you a little bit from Ken's chapter. Ken is a writer. He's in his 70s, and he's been writing, he's kind of a politically progressive guy. He wrote a book about a commune that he was a member of. He's done a lot of essays and articles for different journals. And he's kind of daunted by social media, by the nature of our public discourse now, by the flood of the avalanche of words. And he's not really clear what to do. And he's in a place of writer's block. He seeks help from Sharon Marks, the Melitz Yosher. And he's gone to her before in the book. You experience an intercession with him that turns on his family. But now this is a number of years later. and he's decided to go to her again about his writer's block. And a salient about him is that he's very secular. He's not religious. You know, he'll go to shul if somebody's having a bar mitzvah or a wedding or something like that. But otherwise, it's just not something that is of interest to him and within his understanding. So he describes his writer's block to Sharon. I want to write. I see myself sitting at the computer, fingers flying, and I have such a big yearning to be there. It's like being homesick. I swallowed hard. And even though my last time with you was incredible, I'm still skeptical. I feel like I have to say that. So is this the kind of thing you can help with? Let's see, said Sharon. She's one of those small women who seem to hold a lot of compressed power, like a hand grenade or one of those diamonds Superman made out of a lump of coal. Not that she's dramatic. Her businesslike manner clashed slightly with her elfin looks. I like that about her. Give me a few minutes, she said. I sat back and looked around the room. There were some certificates mounted on the wall, degrees, I thought, and maybe some kind of licensing thing for PIs. I heard Sharon mumbling softly, looking at a small leather-bound book. She told me last time I consulted her that she had to cleanse herself to do this work, to be sure the spirits responding to her pleas were the good kind. I'd been to a synagogue less than a dozen times since Lucy's kid's, Josh's bar mitzvah, and that was almost a decade ago. I couldn't really hear the words Sharon was saying, but I kind of got the tune. I thought she was chanting prayers. So in answer to Lynn's question, that's a first step of doing an intercession for someone. You clear yourself by praying, by chanting psalms. There's a number of different ways to do it. And the purpose of doing it is to make sure that when you ask for help, the voice you're hearing is the Yetzer HaTov, emanates from the good inclination, not the evil one, that there's not something trying to trick you, whispering in your ear. And so it's a practice that the people who do it need to understand that they aren't infallible and they aren't special. They're opening themselves as a channel. They're not being God. They're allowing God to come through. So Sharon does that first step with Ken. Then she's done. So tell me more, Sharon said at last. I added as much detail as I could to my predicament. She had a few questions. The way you describe it, I see a kind of curtain or barrier between you and your writing. Do you have a felt sense of a barrier? I nodded. It isn't like walking into a wall. Softer, but yes, it's like I see what I want and I can't reach it. All this noise on social media, she asked, when did it start bothering you? I had to laugh. When didn't it? But it's one thing to feel irritated at assholes on Twitter and another to just reel at the venom and nastiness and self-righteous cruelty that seems to have taken over those spaces. Definitely, my feelings are Trump-related. I was always disgusted by the MAGA posts, Jewish space lasers, for shit's sake. These days, I'm just as disgusted with parts of the left that seem equally righteous and intolerant and equally eager to strike out at perceived enemies. Only now the handiest enemies aren't actual fascists. They're what you call liberals. Like these leftists aren't going to trash Republican politicians for the stupid, crazy shit they say because that's what they expect from Republicans. They're going to trash Democrats who are just a few words off from the progressive party line, or who say they're willing to negotiate or cooperate or find a middle way. I've always thought of the left as the side I'm on, but so much of the time now, the left is so fucking simplistic. The oppressed are clearly labeled and always right. The oppressor is everyone else and always wrong. Where's that going to get us? So you don't know where you belong, said Sharon. A big sigh escaped me. Yes. And you feel a little bit exiled from your old community. Yes, maybe more than a little bit. And the way you're describing these feelings, everyone seems out for themselves. Everyone's trying to win, not find solutions or make peace. Yes, I said again. And I feel worried about where the left has gone. The oppressed oppressor thing is all about identity. That's not meaningless. Racism is real, But what about class? What about well-being? Beyonce and the guy who camps out in a vacant lot down the block are both subject to prejudice by people who just see their skin. No argument there. But one has every privilege money can buy, and the other one eats garbage. How does it help to pretend they're the same? It feels like the heart has gone out of politics. Sharon asked me a few more questions, and then she said, "Excuse me now," and went into, I don't know, a trance, some subtly altered state. When she opened her eyes, she was her businesslike self again. "Okay," said Sharon, "something came through very clearly. This is technical, Ken. You're going to have to read it for yourself, but I'll give you the high points." In Parshat Behar, starting in Leviticus 25, the people are told to observe two kinds of sabbatical year in which the land and animals are given a rest. There's an amnesty for debts. Relatives can redeem people who are indentured or enslaved, and the land is returned to its original owners. The Shemitah, or sabbatical year, comes every 7 years. The Yovel, or Jubilee year, comes every 49. There are lots of associated details, 55 verses taking up all of chapter 25. You'll probably need to read the whole thing a few times to get the context, but your specific assignment is to read the first half, Leviticus 25, 1 to 24. Read it every day for 49 days and write whatever arises for you each day. The subject, the length, the form, those are all entirely up to you. You might feel like writing a sentence one day and 10 pages the next. She paused for breath. Me too. Why don't you say the assignment back to me, Ken, so we're both clear that it's understood? And also, if you want to do it, remember saying yes and stopping can get you into trouble. Not like an outbreak of boils or a plague of toads, but a spell of depression or free-floating anger, maybe, being visited by feelings that aren't exactly your own. But there's no penalty for saying no. Half of me wanted to split. The text sounded like some arcane calendar thing. What would I learn from that? But then I remembered that I didn't have anywhere else to go for help. It did work last time, and like Lucy said, what could it hurt? So I repeated the assignment back and told Sharon I was in, wondering the whole time what it could mean. I didn't remember ever reading or hearing about these special years. When I got home and sat down to read the text, I was blown away. It was some kind of revolutionary economics, but written down at least 2,500 years ago. Parts reminded me of indigenous relationships to the land. The last line of verse 23 says, "The land is mine, you are but strangers, resident with me." The whole thing is like a great equalizer of social condition and position, because whatever land anyone acquired in the times between these special years was essentially canceled whenever one came around. You know that trite saying about leveling the playing field? They actually tried to do it. That started me obsessing, and my obsessive thoughts filled many pages of my writing assignment. What if we had these, what could I call them? Customs, policies, lifeways? Imagine that the head of some corporate agribusiness would know as the year approached that the land he owned would have to be returned to those he bought or took it from. In the ordinary way of contemporary political bullshitting, of course, these ideas are laughable because there's absolutely no chance that those who've profited by exploiting others' labor would be willing to share the wealth, let alone surrender it. That set me to thinking about how our certainties, our ideas of what's possible, become embedded in our society and our brains, and pretty soon we can't see around them or over or under them. So that's an example of what happens in an intercession. And it looks like we have a few more minutes, and totally happy to take questions, comments, whatever.
Well, I think these things are connected. I still don't understand why I wept through the last chapter. I don't understand why it touches me so deeply. So there is that. And then the yearning that I'm bringing tonight, it has to do with how do we create a spiritual community? What, and then having said that aloud here in front of everybody, I realize that there's some part of me that has an assumption, Arlene, that you'll just be able to email the recipe, the steps. And it's undoubtedly far more complex and layered than that.
Well, I hope that well, I can't put it in an email. I hope that the book offers a kind of recipe because in each chapter, in most of the chapters, the character who's narrating the chapter is facing some kind of an ethical challenge that needs to be understood and navigated and surmounted. So in one case, it's lashon hara, gossip, someone who tries to attack this character and discredit her because doesn't want the truth to be said about himself, and this erupts into a whole national issue. For example, in other chapters, it's the process of needing to find a rabbi to replace a beloved rabbi who passed away, and then and how the community operates in its search process, what it learns, the mistakes it makes, where it goes from having made those mistakes, are all part of a recipe for how you build spiritual community. And one of the chapters, that beloved rabbi narrates from the world to come. He's not here on the planet anymore. He died of COVID, but he's able to see and understand something about the world that we are inhabiting here in Asiya on planet Earth, and tell us what he learned from his experience. Uh, but I guess I feel, Lynn, like one of the very biggest lessons that people share in the book over and over again, each in their own way, is that to make community, you have to find a way of being open, connecting, embracing, and sharing everything you're doing with people with whom you don't agree on everything, people who aren't just like you, people who don't think the same things are important. And that's hard, but it's an absolute truth. If we want to look like at what society looks like, if people only want to surround themselves with an echo chamber, people who absolutely they feel are like themselves, look at the MAGA movement. That's what you get. So we need to do the opposite thing, right? We need to find a way that our overarching values of love and justice, pluralism, participation, equity, healing for the planet, healing for our own selves and our own stories, that all these things need to be in our foreground when we come together. And, I think there are communities that are very conscious in that way, and have taken this on consciously as their assignment and do the work together. And there's other communities that are, more or less just organizations or institutions. A lot of infrastructure is developed, but the heart might not necessarily be available for people.
That's it for me. Thank you. That exactly, that piece. Thanks.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. I think we have time for another one if there is. Varda, you have your hand up.
So, yeah, hi. I've
Hi.
wanted to meet you for a long time. I've heard about your other work, and so I'm glad to be here. Um, do you feel like in some way you channeled the characters? I mean, how did they get uh, arise for you? And in some way, are you the intercessor by having created this?
Well, Sharon is, I mean, I have done that practice and I have studied that practice, but Sharon isn't exactly like me. We're not that alike. But yeah, writing fiction, you do kind of channel the characters, right? Like you see who you want to portray and you want them to tell their own stories. And unlike writing an essay, for me, it feels like I'm listening and writing down what I hear more than constructing. But I will say, and it's important, I think, to to be frank about this, that all of those challenges that the characters face in the book, I borrowed from something I actually experienced myself. Either I was the person who had the challenge, or I was close at hand and observed what was going on. So I've been in the middle of a Lashon Hara thing. There's a chapter where someone has to come to terms because when the book is unfolding, it ends about 6 weeks before the 2024 election. So Trump hasn't happened yet, but people are fearful that he will be, and they're trying to prepare themselves to support each other when that time comes. But within that, October 7th happens, and people have to face what's going on in Israel and Gaza and how they feel about it. And things happen to them, like my character he's a graduate student at Berkeley as a double major in Jewish studies and Asian studies. And so the minute October 7th happens, he's being pressed in the center of two very different ideas of what the meaning of all that is and how people should relate to it. So all those things have happened to me. I bet they've happened to you guys too. We can't really escape living in the actual existing world. And
Right.
and so yes, I was channeling the characters' voices, but but I was basing it on real experiences too.
Uh-huh. And I mean, in my experience of spiritual community, there's very little resolution at all. I mean, there's just a lot of painful stuff that's gotten brought up, and people who are in very different stages of development who are just not ready to, lay it all out for transformation. Um, and so, I mean, the hard part is coming to terms with accepting that everybody's at the stage that they're at, which
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can't bring everyone to some kind of, simultaneous closure, but at the same time, you know, I've been in renewal communities where it was the conscious stated intention to support each other in our healing. And I've been in communities that didn't define themselves that way, and the conscious stated intention is to have a place to do Shabbos and the holidays. And there's a world of difference for me between those two things. And so while I agree with you, it can't be abracadabra and everyone, has a perfect resolution at the same time. But on the other hand, what are you going to talk about? I've been in communities where things are happening in the big world that are making themselves felt to us, like right now. And it's not okay to talk about that because that's politics and we don't talk about that here. That didn't work for me, you
right.
know? So, how do people frame why are we here together? What are we here to do? And I think it has to be to learn, to grow, to connect.
Hmm. Right. Well, I'm still seeking that
Some kind of,
myself after years of my own journey.
I,
So,
I, kn- I know how you feel. A lot of my davening is online now. So
right.
suddenly
Yeah.
I started echoing. Are you hearing a big echo?
It may be because Cindy unmuted. Well, it's not Cindy, but that
Yeah.
unmuted.
Anyway, we're at the end,
Yeah,
I think.
that's
So
good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure to
well,
talk
thank
to you.
you, Arlene, for a wonderful presentation and reading from your wonderful book. Uh,
Thanks so much for having me, Marge. I enjoyed talking with you all.
thank you for being here with us.
Thank you,
I
everybody.
want
Thank
to chime
you.
in with Deborah that the book was compelling. I hesitate to call it a page turner because that sounds like something that it's not, and yet I couldn't leave it as I was reading it. So I hope everybody else will.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I hope so too. I think in the chat is a URL, but basically it's the Intercessor, all one word, .info. And there you can learn more about the book, download the first chapter, see discount codes to buy it before the end of January at a pretty substantial discount. And the most important thing to me is that word of mouth is the way that this book is getting to the people who should read it. And if you at all want to post it to your social media, review it on your website, give it to your friends, I ask you to do that because I have a strong desire to have it get out.
Right. Are there copies available locally without buying it at this point?
I don't know.
Okay.
You mean, are they in the library or something?
Well, at HaMakom, one copy or something like that.
I don't know. I guess
I
March could
noticed
answer them.
that I think on the in the chat that you could buy a group of 5 books.
Mhm.
There's yeah, there are a number of ways to get a discount. So and in bulk too,
And
if you
so
buy
we could
5 or
do
more.
that and distribute it to,
But yeah, and of course, be in contact with me if there's any way that I can help make it available. I will be glad to.
yeah, okay, great.
Okay. Okie doke. Thank you.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.